Hey, what's going on, everybody? Zach here with Brandonwound Pickups, and welcome back to another episode of Rewind Time. So today we got something different for you. We have a pair of Carvin C22 humbuckers. Those crazy looking or what? Look at all those screws and slugs. So yeah, this is the C22N and the C22B. I'm gonna be totally honest, I don't actually know a tremendous amount about the history of these because I never really got into Carvin. I've always been sort of a traditionalist, with Gibson, Fender, Martin, all that kind of stuff. But I do know that we can fix these. So they have some issues, and that's why we're doing this rewind time, is because look at how messed up this pickup really is. See that crack right there? Well, that looks like one crack on camera, and same up here. That is many cracks. It is not a good situation with this pickup. It's really jacked. So what we're basically going to have to do is rebuild these entire things, pretty much. So basically, I don't know if either of these coils work. I haven't tested them yet. But even if they do, we're still going to rewind the coils because the crack situation is not good. We need to remedy that to make these reliable in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the whole thing apart. We have both of the pickups, the other one's in the other room there. It's actually in a little bit better condition than this one. But we're going to take them both, and we're going to take them totally apart, and we're going to see how bad these bobbins are. I mean, I know this one is particularly bad, but we're going to have to do some surgery and rebuild these bobbins before we can even wind on them. Because if you just take this off and rewind it, the coil's just going to die again because the wire's going to get pinched in that crack. So we're going to take this apart, and we'll be back here in a little bit. I'll probably start with the one that's in a little bit better condition first. So yeah, let's go take a look, shall we? All right, guys, so we got our first coil peeled here. I actually started with the pickup that's in slightly better condition before I get into this disaster pickup, just so I have an idea what's going on before I get to the one that's really going to be difficult. So all the slugs came out really nicely, all 11 of them. That's a lot of slugs. This one is still cracked. You can see it's got a crack running through the center, but this one appears to just be a single crack as far as I can tell, maybe one other little spot there. But again, much better condition than the other pickup. So this one's going to be a little bit easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this crack up a little bit. And we're going to get some really thin liquid super glue. And we're going to get that down in that crack as much as we can throughout the crack, spread it open, get it in there. And then we're going to close it back up and, wipe off all the excess and stuff. And maybe clamp it even, just to really ensure that we get a nice bobbin when we're done here. Because that crack, what's happening, I'm pretty sure what killed this coil is it opened up, and when it moves around or whatever, I think that crack actually pinched the wire and broke it on the inside, which is probably what happened with all of these coils. I would imagine that's probably why it went dead. So we want to make this bobbin as strong as possible. So we're going to try to get a lot of glue in there without making, a mess. We want to make sure our slugs and everything still go in. But yeah, so we're going to fortify this bobbin. The other bobbin in this pickup is actually in pretty good condition, believe it or not. I don't know if we're going to mess with it. I'm going to have to take it off and see if it's cracked on the bottom, because it's not cracked on the top. But if it has any crack at all, we're going to go ahead and rewind that one too, even though it works. But this one did not. So we're going to get this one on the winder. This had 42 gauge plain enamel on it, which is kind of cool. See that there? So that's what we're going to rewind it with. And like I said, the other coil worked, so we actually know what to wind it to as well. It was about 3.7K or something like that. And I think this is the neck pickup. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. But yeah, so we're going to get this wound up, and then I think I'll come back once I have this taken apart, the crazy pickup, and we're going to start rebuilding bobbins and maybe show you how that turns out. Okay, so let's start fixing bobbins, shall we? Alright guys, so we're on the bridge pickup now, and we got our worst coil here. It's actually a little bit better than I was expecting. I was worried that this crack ran all the way through, and thankfully it doesn't. It runs almost all the way through. I was a little bit worried about when I peeled all the wire off that the thing was just going to kind of break in half, and it was going to be a disaster trying to put it back together. But it didn't, thankfully. It is still very cracked. I mean, it's got the one main crack that runs through the middle of it, and then it's got a bunch of spiderweb, other little cracks that are all going to have to be taken care of before we can wind on this. This coil, believe it or not, worked. Couldn't believe it. I mean, that crack is so bad. That's amazing that this worked. This one, the bridge pickup, was around 13K originally, 12 or 13 I would guess, because we have 43 gauge poly in this one, whereas the neck pickup had plain enamel. And this one was wax potted as well. The neck was not. And maybe that's part of the reason why this coil still worked, is because the windings were waxed, whereas they weren't on the neck, and the neck pickup was dead. But still, we got to fix this. And I think what's happened here is these slugs, and probably the screws as well. It's not going to focus very well, but they've rusted. They've corroded really badly. And that rust, I think, is just pushing out on the bobbin and putting a lot of pressure on it. And that probably just cracked the plastic. That's what I'm going to guess happened here. And in those cracks is dirt and grime and bits of rust, dust, and stuff like that that's gotten in there over the years. So we're going to need to try to scrape some of that out of there, if at all possible, before we try to glue this thing back together. And another thing we're going to have to do, because otherwise we didn't want this to happen again, right? So we're going to have to take these slugs and we're going to have to clean the corrosion off of them to get them back down to kind of the diameter that they should be, like at the bottom here. Obviously, we're not going to touch the tops unless we absolutely have to, because we want the pickup to still look the same as it did before. We still want that nice patina on the top. We just want it to be clean on the side, so it's a nice size, so it won't crack the bobbin in the future. So I think we're going to call this a two-parter, because I know super glue dries really fast, but I want to let these sit overnight, I think. So I'm going to get these cleaned up. I'm going to get all the bobbins glued up and clamped up and whatever, and I think we're going to let them sit overnight. And then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll show you what the bobbins look like, all cleaned up and done and ready to wind. Then we'll wind them. Oh, I just heard a noise there. More cracks happening, potentially. So we're going to clean them up, and then we'll start to wind them tomorrow, and then we'll put them back together. And we'll take a look at them once they're done. So yeah, we're going to call this a two-part. This is the end of part one. Stay tuned for part two. We'll be back with that tomorrow. And we'll get these things fixed up and back to the customer. So, take it easy, guys, and we'll see you on part two.